It's my first time. What the millionaire did between four walls will leave you speechless. The train from Maine sped past misty fields, carrying with it a young heart caught between fear and hope. Emma Carter leaned her forehead against the window pane, her eyes wide as the scenery began to change. She whispered inwardly, "This time, Emma, don't look back. This is your chance to begin again." Through the glass fogged with condensation, the silhouettes of red brick houses slipped away, replaced by towering blocks of steel in the distance. When the skyline of New York came into view, Emma almost stopped breathing. "Oh my," she murmured, her lips trembling. Before her stood skyscrapers gleaming under the autumn sun, their windows catching the light like mirrors of possibility. Car horns echoed faintly, pulsing like the heartbeat of a restless city that never truly slept. Her hand tightened on the small suitcase beside her. Inside were all she owned: a handful of clothes, a weathered sketchbook, and the savings from 2 long years working at her family's flower shop. "I made it, Mom," she thought, picturing her mother's gentle smile behind the counter, surrounded by blossoms. When the train screeched to a halt at Penn Station, a damp breeze swept in, carrying smoke, coffee, and asphalt. The doors hissed open, and the crowd poured out. Footsteps, rolling luggage, street vendors shouting, loudspeaker announcements. It all crashed into her at once. Emma froze for a split second, her heart pounding as though urging her to run back to Maine, but she drew a sharp breath. "Come on, Emma," she whispered to herself, stepping into the tide of strangers. Outside the station, New York seized her senses. The scent of hot pizza drifting from a corner stand, the brassy cry of a saxophone competing with the chaos of traffic, neon signs flickering even though daylight still lingered. It was overwhelming. And yet, it pulled her in. Her rented East Village apartment was no bigger than a shoebox. When she set her suitcase down, there was hardly space left to walk. A single bed, a small desk, and a rickety bookshelf. From the narrow window, she could see a fire escape and the brick wall of the building across. "Not pretty, but it's a start," Emma said aloud with a nervous laugh, as though reassuring herself. That evening, she wandered the streets. A corner cafe spilled the sweetness of waffles into the air. A dusty bookstore played soft jazz that floated into the night, along with the scent of old paper. On the sidewalk, an elderly artist sketched quick portraits, his pencil gliding with both speed and tenderness. Each tiny detail pressed warmth into Emma's chest. Later that night, she sat by the window of her room, bathed in the patchy glow of a street lamp. The city hummed below, horns blaring, voices rising from a nearby bar, laughter cutting through the air. Emma clutched her sketchbook, flipping through pages filled with hurried drawings from her days at the flower shop. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow I'll step into the place where dreams can take root. The next morning, New York stretched beneath a clear blue sky, though the air carried a crisp chill. Emma woke early, lingering before the mirror. After trying on several outfits, she chose a cream linen dress with a soft gray cardigan. She smiled faintly at her reflection. Not perfect, but enough to carry confidence into the unknown. Pulling her small suitcase aside, Emma opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Her heart still raced, but the rhythm felt different now, like the steady beat of a beginning. On Monday morning, Emma stepped out of the subway, her hands trembling slightly. The New York air carried a sharp chill, turning her breath into thin clouds. Ahead stood the old stone building of the New York Academy of Architecture, its tall dome, pale stone walls, and golden windows glowing in the early sun. "This is where I belong," Emma whispered, her eyes fixed on the building's timeless beauty. Inside, the grand hall stretched wide, lined with sketches of famous structures. Warm light spread across polished wooden floors. Students hurried past, chatting and laughing, their footsteps echoing. Emma clutched her folder tighter, suddenly feeling small in this confident crowd. "Excuse me, do you know where the urban design class is?" she asked a student scanning her schedule. "Third floor, room 304, the girl replied with a kind smile. "You must be new. Good luck." "Thank you so much," Emma exhaled, relief softening her shoulders. When she entered the classroom, a buzz of excitement filled the air. A group near the window whispered eagerly, "Did you hear? Daniel Hayes is speaking today." "No way. Seriously? I've only seen him in magazines." "He's a living legend in modern architecture." The name alone seemed to lift the room's temperature. Emma blinked, her heart racing. She had read countless articles about Daniel Hayes, the celebrated architect, founder of Hayes and Associates, known for projects that were sleek yet profoundly human. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened. Daniel Hayes walked in, tall and composed, his dark brown hair neatly combed, his navy suit perfectly tailored. Yet what struck Emma wasn't his appearance, but his gaze, sharp but not cold, as if he could take in the entire room in a single glance. His voice was deep and steady. "Today, we'll talk about sustainable architecture in urban environments. But first, I want you to remember, architecture is not just steel and glass. It is the way we create spaces where people can live, love, and grow." Sitting in the third row, Emma gripped her notebook, every word landing deep in her chest, echoing her quietest beliefs. When the Q&A began, she hesitated. Hands shot up around her, questions about materials, costs, and techniques. Her heart pounded. "If I don't ask now, I may never have the chance." She raised her hand. "Mr. Hayes," her voice quivered, "how can high-end projects avoid raising rents and forcing low-income residents out? Is sustainable architecture only for the wealthy?" The room went silent for a few seconds. A few surprised faces turned toward her. Daniel tilted his head, his eyes locking on hers. A faint smile touched his lips, a spark of interest glimmering. "Excellent question," he said, his tone firm yet thoughtful. He spent nearly 10 minutes answering, citing projects that balanced luxury with affordability, stressing that true sustainability was not just about green materials, but also about social equity. And as he spoke, his gaze returned to Emma more than once, leaving her flustered yet strangely seen. When the lecture ended, students rushed forward for photos and autographs. Emma quietly packed her bag, hoping to slip away. Then a low, steady voice called behind her. "Emma Carter, isn't it?" She turned sharply. Daniel Hayes stood only a few steps away, his eyes keen but his smile warm. He extended his hand. "I was very impressed by your question." Emma's fingers trembled as they met his steady handshake. Daniel reached into his pocket and handed her a card. "At Hayes & Associates, we're always looking for people with a different perspective. If you're interested, reach out." Emma held the smooth, heavy card between her fingers, as if it carried the weight of a door swinging open to her future. That night, Emma barely slept. The white business card with the words Daniel Hayes. Hayes & Associates lay neatly on her small desk, glowing under the yellow lamplight as though it carried its own quiet radiance. Should I even try? What if I fail? But If I don't, I'll regret it forever. She opened her laptop, rewriting her application letter over and over, deleting, typing, polishing each sentence as if her entire future rested on the wording. Near dawn, at 2 a.m, she finally pressed send. 3 days later, an email arrived. We invite you to an interview this Friday morning at Hayes & Associates headquarters. Emma's heart thumped wildly. Standing before the mirror in her tiny room, she tried on outfit after outfit. At last, she chose a white blouse and a charcoal pencil skirt, the simplest but most proper set she owned. That morning, the subway was packed. Horns blared, voices crowded in her ears, and her palms grew damp. But when she emerged near the Hayes & Associates tower, she froze in awe. Before her rose a skyscraper of glass and steel stretching into the sky, reflecting drifting clouds. The revolving glass doors opened into a lobby of white marble and a glossy walnut reception desk. It was sleek, refined, a world away from the small-town flower shop she had left behind. "Good morning. I have an interview with Mr. Hayes," Emma said softly to the receptionist. The woman in a black suit smiled professionally. "Elevator 4, 28th floor. Mr. Hayes is expecting you." When the elevator doors opened, a glass-lined hallway revealed a panoramic view of Manhattan. Emma drew a steadying breath and followed the silver-haired assistant, who introduced herself as Helen. The office took her breath away. One wall was entirely glass, overlooking Central Park, sunlight pouring into the spacious room. A massive walnut desk sat at the center, polished and perfectly arranged. Daniel Hayes stood with his back to the door, phone pressed to his ear, his deep voice discussing a project timeline. When he turned, he smiled faintly, setting the phone aside. "Emma Carter," he said, stepping forward to shake her hand. "I appreciate your punctuality. Not many people in New York manage that." Emma returned a small smile, her nerves still tight. Instead of sitting behind his desk, Daniel gestured for her to join him in the seating area by the window, making the large office suddenly feel less intimidating. "So, tell me," he began, his gaze steady. "Who is Emma Carter beyond what's on this resume?" Emma swallowed and began carefully. "I come from a small town in Maine. My family runs a flower shop, so I grew up surrounded by the scent of daisies, roses, and lavender. Since I was a child, I noticed how spaces could shape feelings, how a bright, open room could lift spirits, while a cramped one made people uneasy." She spoke of working at the shop to save money, of her belief that architecture wasn't just for beauty, but for improving people's lives. Daniel listened intently, his fingers tapping lightly on a coffee cup. When Emma finished, he leaned forward. "When you look at our company, what do you think you can contribute?" Emma inhaled deeply. "A different perspective. I understand the real needs of people who don't live in million-dollar apartments. I want to create spaces that are both beautiful and accessible, and I believe this firm can make that possible on a larger scale." Silence stretched for a moment. Then Daniel nodded slowly, a small smile forming. "I like the way you think. If you'd like, you can begin your internship on Monday." Emma's eyes widened. "You mean, I'm hired?" "That's right. When you know something is right, why delay?" His smile deepened, carrying a warmth she hadn't seen before. As Emma left the building that day, she felt as though her feet barely touched the ground. Everything had happened faster than she imagined, but in her heart, one truth echoed. The journey has truly begun. That Monday, Emma arrived at the Hayes & Associates tower half an hour early. Her heart pounded as she clipped on her temporary badge and stepped into the main office floor. Inside was an entirely different world. Sunlight poured into the open space, rows of desks neatly arranged yet scattered with blueprints, fabric samples, and color boards. Computer screens displayed vivid 3D renderings so real, Emma felt she could almost reach in and touch them. A warm, steady voice came from behind. "Emma, right? I'm Marcus Kim." The man, in his 40s, tall with black-rimmed glasses and a simple white shirt, offered his hand with a kind smile. "Welcome to the high-end residential team. From today, you'll be working with us." Emma shook his hand, gratitude flooding her chest. Thank you, sir. I'm eager to learn." "Don't call me sir, just Marcus. Around here, we're a team." Marcus led her around, introducing colleagues. Though everyone was busy, they greeted her with warm nods and quick smiles. Emma observed. Some pinned large-scale drawings on wallboards, others tested fabric colors under the light, while a few adjusted intricate 3D models. The atmosphere was focused yet never tense, like a symphony where each person contributed their own rhythm. After the introductions, Marcus handed her a folder. "This is a sample apartment layout. Try adjusting the lighting and interior arrangement. Don't be afraid to test ideas. Here, creativity matters more than years of experience." Emma settled at a desk reserved for her. Her hands trembled as she opened the files. She moved light fixtures, shifted wall colors, widened hallways to invite natural sunlight. Each adjustment, she turned to ask the colleague nearby, "Do you think this angle is too bright? What if I added lighter wood tones?" Her colleague nodded. "Good idea. Maybe combine it with some recycled material." The first day flew by. Emma left exhausted yet exhilarated, with a quiet voice inside whispering, "I can do this. This is where I belong." In the days that followed, Emma threw herself into the work. She learned to use professional software she had only heard of before, quickly adapting to the pace. Each morning she arrived early to review yesterday's drawings. Each evening she jotted down notes of what she had learned. Every so often, while focused on her screen, she sensed a gaze from afar. Looking up, she'd see Daniel standing at the end of the row, speaking with another staff member, but pausing just slightly when his eyes met hers. When he passed by, he offered only brief words. "Good work. Interesting color choice." Just a few words, yet enough to send Emma's heart into a flutter. She told herself, it's only the attention of a boss toward a promising intern, nothing more. But deep down, she knew there was something in his gaze that said otherwise. On Thursday night, the office emptied out. The steady hum of the air conditioner blended with the solitary tapping of Emma's keyboard. She stayed behind, refining the living room design for a new project, testing a layout that maximized natural light without knocking down walls. Suddenly, a deep voice sounded behind her. "Creative." Emma startled, spinning in her chair. Daniel stood there, not in his usual tailored suit, but in a rolled-sleeve white shirt, gray trousers, his hair slightly tousled from a long day. He stepped closer, leaning to study the screen. "The way you've used light and color, it's skillful. It makes the space breathe." Emma's cheeks warmed. "Thank you. I think a beautiful room should make people feel comfortable, not confined." Daniel was silent for a moment, his eyes softening. Then he pulled out a chair, sitting beside her, his voice lower. "Emma, may I ask you something personal?" Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, of course." Emma blinked, staring at Daniel seated beside her, the desk lamp casting both sharpness and warmth across his features. "Have you ever been in love?" he asked, his voice low, unexpected. Her heart skipped. She bit her lip, shaking her head. "No. I was always busy with school and work, and maybe I just haven't met the right person." She feared he might laugh or tease, but Daniel only nodded, his gaze steady. "I understand." The silence stretched, broken only by the faint clicking of her still-running computer. Then Daniel leaned slightly closer, his tone softer. "This Saturday, would you like to have dinner with me? Not a work dinner, just two people talking." Emma's cheeks warmed. She swallowed hard, pulse racing. I think I'd like that." A flicker of a smile curved his lips. "Good. There's a little place in Brooklyn, not too noisy. I think you'll enjoy it." On Saturday evening, Emma stood before her mirror in the tiny East Village apartment. She chose a simple navy dress, her hair tied back in a low bun. When Daniel arrived in a black SUV, she felt as though she were stepping into another world. The restaurant sat on a quiet Brooklyn street, golden light spilling through wooden-framed windows, the air rich with fresh bread and roasted garlic. A soft jazz tune drifted through the door. Daniel held the door open, his voice unusually gentle. "After you." Their table by the window was tucked away from the bustle. Red wine shimmered in the candlelight. At first, their conversation circled around work, projects, and architectural trends. But slowly, it shifted. Emma spoke of her childhood in the flower shop, of watching customers come for every occasion, birthdays, weddings, even funerals. "I think that's when I realized space and emotions are always tied together. Flowers aren't just flowers. They carry memories, both joy and grief." Daniel listened intently, his eyes softening. Then he shared his own childhood in a strict business family, a father who demanded perfection. "Maybe I grew up too quickly, but sometimes growing up fast means missing other things." Time passed unnoticed. Outside, streetlights turned golden. Their glasses sat empty, but between them was a connection warmer than words. On the drive back, a light rain fell, city lights reflecting on slick pavement. Inside the SUV, the soft hum of jazz mingled with the patter of raindrops, wrapping them in quiet stillness. When they stopped in front of Emma's building, Daniel turned off the engine but didn't unlock the doors right away. His eyes sought hers, warm yet careful. "Tonight was wonderful," Emma whispered, her cheeks flushed. "I think so too," Daniel replied, his voice lower. "Thank you for sharing so much." Silence lingered, filled only by the sound of rain. Then Daniel leaned in slowly, giving her the chance to retreat. She didn't move. The kiss brushed her lips like a whisper, tentative, then deepened with quiet certainty. For a moment, the city's noise vanished, leaving only their breath and the pounding of her heart. When they finally pulled apart, Emma kept her eyes closed, clinging to the sweetness. Daniel's voice came softly, almost afraid to break the fragile air. "I don't want to make things complicated, especially since we work together." Emma opened her eyes, her gaze trembling yet firm. "I know. But some things can't be ignored just because they're risky." Their eyes locked, acknowledging what had begun, something beyond work, uncertain but undeniably real. In the days after that evening in Brooklyn, Emma worked with renewed energy. She arrived early, stayed late, and her designs drew genuine praise from colleagues. Each time Daniel passed by with a quiet nod and a brief compliment, her heart lifted. But soon, Emma began noticing strange looks. Conversations halted when she entered a room. Some whispered, some exchanged knowing glances. One afternoon, pouring coffee in the pantry, she overheard two female voices by the door. "See that? The new girl already has a big project." "Yeah, someone's backing her. Who else but Daniel Hayes?" A quiet laugh followed, sharp as a blade. The cup in Emma's hand suddenly felt cold. "They think I'm only succeeding because of Daniel." That night, she sat at her desk staring at Daniel's business card tucked into her notebook. Her chest ached. If this keeps going, everything I've worked for will be dismissed. I can't let them believe I've been favored. The next day, when Daniel approached her desk near closing time, a faint smile on his lips, he asked, "Dinner tonight?" Emma looked up, her eyes unsteady. She shook her head, her voice barely steady. "I think we should stop for a while." Daniel froze, his brows tightening slightly. "Why?" "The rumors, the pressure. I don't want to be the subject of gossip." Silence filled the space. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze deep but not accusing. "I don't care what people say." "But I do," Emma answered softly yet firmly. "I've worked hard to be here. I won't let speculation overshadow that." Daniel was quiet, then gave a small nod. "If that's what you need, I'll respect it." From that day, distance grew. He remained polite, still discussed work, but no longer lingered, no longer stopped with a quiet word. The vast office felt colder, and each time their eyes met by accident, Emma caught a quiet sadness in his. One evening, as Emma packed up, Anna, her closest teammate, sat down beside her. "You don't seem happy lately. Is something going on?" Emma hesitated, then whispered, "I just don't want people to think the wrong thing. I don't want them to believe my success comes from someone else instead of my own effort." Anna studied her, her voice calm but resolute. "Emma, I've been here long enough to know. Rumors will always exist, but happiness? That doesn't always come twice. Do you really want to let idle words decide your joy?" Emma lowered her head, her fingers tightening around her bag strap. Her heart pounded as Anna's words rang like a bell inside her. Don't let rumors decide your happiness. That night, stepping out into the quiet office corridor, Emma gazed at the city lights shimmering beyond the glass. She knew she couldn't stay silent forever. Perhaps it was time to face the truth she carried in her own heart. A week later, good news arrived faster than Emma expected. That afternoon, her inbox lit up with the subject line, "Interview request, Vision and Space magazine." Emma clicked, her eyes widening. They wanted to feature her perspective after the Aurora Heights project presentation. Her heart raced. They actually want to write about me? A mere intern? On the day of the interview, Emma chose a tailored beige suit paired with a white silk blouse. She wanted to look professional, yet still herself. The meeting took place in a small cafe in Manhattan. The journalist, Clara Reynolds, was a woman in her 40s with bright, sharp eyes and a knowing smile. She began with questions about inspiration, process, and how Emma balanced aesthetics with functionality. Emma answered clearly, her voice more confident than she expected. She spoke of late nights researching sustainable materials, of wandering through neighborhoods to observe how people truly lived in their spaces. Then came the question Emma had been expecting. "There are rumors that you and Daniel Hayes, the CEO of the firm, are in a personal relationship. Is that true?" Emma held Clara's gaze, drawing a steady breath. "Yes," she said carefully. "We are in a relationship. But I want to be clear. I was accepted as an intern before there was any personal connection. My success on the Aurora Heights project came from skill, effort, and teamwork, not from favoritism." Clara jotted notes, her brows lifting at Emma's candor. "Aren't you afraid people will doubt you or diminish your work?" Emma offered a faint smile, her tone firm. "If anyone wants to judge, they should look at the designs, the timelines, the outcomes. My personal life doesn't lessen the quality of my work. If someone thinks otherwise, it says more about them than about me." 2 weeks later, the magazine hit the stands with Emma on the cover. Emma Carter, a new voice in sustainable architecture. The photo showed her standing proudly beside the project model, eyes bright with conviction. Midway through the article, her statement about her relationship with Daniel appeared exactly as she had spoken it, unedited. The firm's reaction was immediate. Some colleagues congratulated her, shook her hand, even emailed to say she had inspired them. But others cast colder looks, their whispers brushing behind her as she passed. Unlike before, Emma didn't bow her head. She walked with her chin lifted, letting her work and her courage speak louder than gossip. The next afternoon, stepping into Daniel's office, she stopped short. On the wall behind his desk, the magazine cover had been framed, displayed with care. Daniel stood with his arms folded, pride gleaming in his eyes. "Not too over the top, is it?" he asked with a hint of humor. Emma laughed, moving closer. "You're really this proud?" "I've been proud for a long time," Daniel said, his voice deep and warm. "Now the world simply sees it too." Emma looked at her own photograph on the wall, and in that moment, she knew the rumors had lost their weight. What remained was belief, Daniel's, her colleagues', and most importantly, her own. On Thursday morning, as Emma opened her laptop at the office, an email appeared that made her heart stop for a beat. Invitation to collaborate. Citywide Sustainable Design Project, San Francisco. She read it over and over. A major West Coast firm wanted her to lead the project, overseeing the interiors for an entire housing renewal initiative. This wasn't just a career step, it was a dream. Her fingers trembled on the keyboard. Project lead, me, really? But joy quickly tangled with fear. It meant moving to San Francisco for at least 2 years. It meant leaving Daniel, leaving everything she had just begun to build in New York. That evening, she met Daniel at a small wine bar in West Village. Golden lights washed over brick walls, wrapping the space in warmth and expectation. He arrived, tall and familiar in a long overcoat. The moment he saw her troubled face, he asked, "What's wrong?" Once seated, with a glass of red wine before her, Emma twisted her fingers, took a breath. "I received an offer from a firm in San Francisco. They want me to lead a citywide sustainable design project. This is the opportunity I've always dreamed of." Daniel was silent for a moment. In the dim light, his gaze was steady, absorbing every word. "And you're afraid that taking it means leaving me," he said quietly, with certainty. Emma lowered her eyes, whispering, "I don't want to lose you, but I can't walk away from this either." He set his glass down and reached across, taking her trembling hands. "Emma, you have to go. This is your dream. I could never forgive myself if I kept you here just because of me." Tears welled in her eyes. But 2 years, so far apart. "We'll manage," Daniel cut in, his voice firm yet gentle. "We'll learn to love across distance. Daily calls, monthly visits. If this matters, we'll find a way." Emma looked into his eyes and saw not just affection, but deep respect for her ambitions. In that moment, she understood. True love wasn't about holding someone back. It was letting them soar and still choosing each other across the open sky. On the walk back, the night wind swept cold through the narrow streets. Emma's hand rested in Daniel's, steady against his warmth. Around them, the city blurred into shadows and light, but all she could feel was the weight of the decision made. This will be our hardest test, Emma thought, her heart torn yet hopeful. But if we found each other once, we'll find each other again, no matter the distance. San Francisco greeted Emma with a salty ocean breeze and an endless stretch of open blue sky. The new firm's office looked out through glass walls toward the Golden Gate Bridge, the morning sun flooding the space with brilliance. On her first day, Emma knew this would be her greatest challenge, but also the dream she had chased for so long. Work pressed in from the start. She led a multinational team, managed massive drawings sprawled across tables, checked every detail of the sustainable initiative. Long days ended late, and Emma returned to her new apartment, still so bare that her footsteps echoed in the empty space. But every evening, at the same hour, her laptop screen glowed. Daniel's face appeared, sometimes blurred by shaky connection, but his eyes carried the same warmth as ever. "How was your day?" he asked. Emma smiled, weary but sincere. "Chaotic, but wonderful. And you?" A faint chuckle. "The same as always. The office feels emptier without you." These late-night calls soon became the rhythm of her life. Sometimes they lasted only minutes because she was too tired. Other nights, they stretched for hours, filled with small details. How her morning coffee had tasted bitter. How a neighbor's cat kept jumping onto her balcony. Still, distance was never easy. Some mornings, Emma woke aching to hear his voice not through a screen, but beside her. Some nights, she sat by the window staring toward the bay, an emptiness in her chest sharp as pain. Yet she reminded herself, this was my choice, and this love is worth fighting for. 3 months passed, and Emma changed. She stood taller in boardrooms, defended her ideas with clarity, earned respect not only for her skill, but for her steady resolve. In the mirror, she saw someone different. Not the shy girl who once arrived in New York, but a woman who knew what she wanted and dared to pursue it fully. One night, after ending a call with Daniel, Emma closed her laptop and whispered to herself, "I've found strength not only in him, but in me." And as the soft glow of the Golden Gate Bridge shimmered in the distance, she knew her love and her dreams were growing together, day by day, step by step. 3 years passed in what felt like a blink. Emma had grown, her career in San Francisco thriving, but in her heart, New York and Daniel remained an irreplaceable space. On a late autumn afternoon, Emma once again pulled her old suitcase through Penn Station. Announcements echoed overhead. Crowds bustled around her. Yet her heartbeat raced just as it had the very first time she arrived in the city. And then, through the throng, she saw Daniel. Tall, steady, the same eyes, though silver strands now touched his temples. His gaze met hers, warm and steady, as if 3 years apart had never existed. Emma dropped her suitcase, quickening her steps. Daniel moved forward too. They embraced tightly, holding on as if to erase all the distance between them. "I missed you," Daniel whispered. "I missed you too," Emma replied, her eyes wet with tears. That evening, they returned to the small Brooklyn restaurant where they had shared their first dinner. The golden light still glowed, the same familiar table waiting, but this time, there was no shyness, only understanding shaped by years apart. Afterward, Daniel led Emma onto the Brooklyn Bridge. The autumn wind cut crisp, Manhattan lights sparkling in the distance. They stopped midway, where the sound of traffic below seemed to fade. Daniel turned to her, his gaze serious. From his coat pocket, he drew a small velvet box and opened it, revealing a simple, elegant platinum ring. "Emma," he said, his deep voice unsteady, "I don't know where the future will take us, but I do know this. I want to go there with you, wherever it may be." Tears spilled down her cheeks. All the lonely nights, hurried calls, and aching silences came rushing back to this single moment. "For 3 years, I've dreamed of this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And my answer is, yes." Daniel knelt, sliding the ring gently onto her finger. When Emma said yes again, the wind seemed to carry the promise across the city. On the Brooklyn Bridge, beneath the cool autumn sky, they kissed, not as an uncertain beginning, but as a vow, firm and enduring, to walk the next journey together. On their wedding day, a small garden outside New York bloomed in white blossoms, spring sunlight spilling across rows of wooden chairs. Soft music played as Emma walked down the flower-strewn aisle, her hands trembling slightly, her eyes glowing with joy. Daniel waited at the end, dressed in a simple yet elegant suit. As Emma drew closer, his lips curved into a faint smile, his eyes glistening. When her hand slipped into his, he whispered just for her, "I've been waiting for this moment since the day you walked into my life." Emma smiled through her tears, "And I've chosen you, not just once, but forever." In their vows, there was no mention of rumors or distance. Instead, Daniel held her gaze and said, "I promise to always lift your dreams, even if your path looks different from mine." Emma's voice trembled, yet rang clear. "And I promise to always return to you, because you are my home, no matter how wide the world may be." In the moment of exchanging rings, Emma and Daniel spoke no words of the distance they had endured or the rumors they had overcome. Instead, they promised to always be each other's home, to support one another's dreams, even if their paths sometimes diverged before meeting again. Through tears, Emma smiled, knowing that true love wasn't about standing side by side every single day. It was about patience, trust, and choosing each other, again and again.